Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Bear Insider's Ultimate Insider. I'm Mike Pawlawski, former Cal quarterback, radio analyst. Today, we're going to talk about the NC State game a little bit. We'll preview Oregon State. I'll talk to Coach Wilcox coming up here shortly. But it's going to sound a little bit the same as we've been talking about this year because we're getting the same result. Last 4 games, we've been on a 4-game losing slide. And those 4 games by 9 points. And some people look at that and they think, oh, just 9 points, we're in every game. But that cannot be and should not be the thought process for when you are playing at this level. As a college football player, you need to believe that you can win every single game. As a coach, you have to believe that you can win every single game. There is zero room in there for a consolation prize of, oh, we tried so hard and look, we were so close. Yeah, the Bears are close, but the majority of it is self-inflicted wounds. If they were getting blown out, you could say, oh, look, they're not good enough. It's talent. It's this, it's that. It's all these different things. But instead, it's a matter of a couple plays in all of these games. And so, and Coach would be the first one to tell you that. Coach Wilcox as well. It's something that they feel that they could correct. Right? The margin for error really slim. And they have the ability to correct these things. They have the ability to make the plays, quite honestly, that they haven't made in these games. And it would just take a couple of them for any one of these games. And it's a completely different thing. Yes, the kicking game, once again, an issue at the end. 28-yard field goal to win the game should be automatic. But you can't put it all on the one play. Yes, it should have happened. But the Bears also could have gotten the ball in the end zone on any of several other drives. So, kicking game rough right now. They're struggling. The offense right now having a tough time. And so let's start on defense because defense, quite honestly, played well enough to win that game, all except for the last 2 drives. They literally shut down NC State's rushing game. NC State had 29 yards rushing in that game. So the matchups up front, the box numbers, the gap integrity, everything was good on defense in terms of the run game. Did a great job. If you look at the stats, for most of that game, Bears ran the ball better. They had better time of possession, and you'd think that they would have won that game. But the last 2 drives, NC State was able to exploit a couple of defensive weaknesses. One, they took advantage of the mismatch between the slot and the nickel. Slot was actually their tight end, and physically, he was just a bigger, stronger player. Now, the Bears and Cam Sidney were in perfect what they call phase. He was right there to make the play in position, in the right coverage, and just couldn't make it because you had a personnel issue. Tight ends that can play, that can run, are a mismatch at every level. If you put a safety on them, if you put a linebacker on them, it's just a mismatch in terms of athleticism, in terms of size, in terms of physicality. And NC State took advantage of it. So you have to have an answer for that. Bears did not have an answer for it, and NC State took that shot twice. With their offense, with their tight end, and they got it both times. The other one was the swing to the back. And there's when you run rushes, you have what's called a green dog or a guy who has assignment that if something swings past them, it's usually an outside back or a defensive end, somebody in that coverage. But if a back swings as a scat back, meaning a free release, that he has the assignment that he has to peel. It used to be called a green dog back in the day, where he'd see the swing coming and he'd peel with it and he'd cover that from underneath, and that would talk the quarterback out of it. Bears missed that on that drive. And so assignments, the one thing about the mismatch, it's hard. Physically, if you don't match up and you're doing your best and you're there, okay, you're giving it 100% effort, I get it, you got to find a better match. But when you have a mental bust and give up a big play, that's a different thing. And that's kind of part of the theme of these last 4 games is there's been mental busts. There's been unforced errors. We keep talking about it, so I sound a bit like a broken record here. But pre-snap penalties averaging 3 false starts per game. And that is trouble. Cannot have that because you're shooting yourself in your foot, and those are drive killers. And so C.J. Bailey, quarterback for NC State, was really good. I think he's a talented young football player, just a true freshman. Probably, I talked to Matt Chasnowski, their play-by-play, and he said that He's probably closer to 6'7", listed as 6'6", but he said he's probably closer to 6'7", just a tall dude. He's athletic as heck. He can run, he can throw it, he's got a live arm. So he looked really good out there. He made a huge play on one of those drives where he literally should have been tackled twice and ended up getting out of it anyway. And throwing the pass for the touchdown. So he was a good player, but you have to get him on the ground when you have him wrapped up. So that's another one. That's not necessarily a mismatch. That's one where if you have him wrapped up, you have to get him down, or at least keep him from throwing the ball until somebody else shows up to help you. Keep his arms down. So that's a tough one. Outside of that, a couple busted plays, defense played really, really well in that game. We flip it over to the offensive side of the ball, and I've talked about this countless times, but you cannot trade touchdowns for field goals. That is a losing recipe almost every single time it happens. The Bears moved the ball decently. They had good yardage, good stats between the 20s. They were able to move the ball down the field. They were able to put some drives together. But then inside the red zone, they just weren't great. And it was what we talked about. It was some penalties. It was not being able to handle blitz pressure. I said it in my preview. They have to be able to handle blitz. They have to be able to handle pressure. They have to beat man coverage because they are going to get it. They have earned it this year. Bears have not handled it extremely well on offense, and so they have earned it. And they didn't handle it great. And this is a combination now. When we're talking about blitz and blitz pickup and handling all that, it's a combination between the O-line, the running backs, the quarterbacks, the receivers, everybody having to be on the same page, because blitz is intended to disrupt your timing. Pressure, anytime you bring dogs, which is linebackers, or blitzes, which is secondary, it's intended to disrupt your timing. And when they disrupt your timing, receivers have to be in and out of their routes on the right timing. Quarterback has to be back, stick his foot in the ground on the right timing. Linemen have to pick up their blocks and get their chips, and the running backs have to find their man and dig it out and sort out the right numbers on who they're blocking. It all has to happen for long enough to get the playoff. And then when you do, you have to make a perfect throw, or you have to make a great catch, or all these things have to happen against pressure. But once you can do that, you talk teams out of pressure, because they know if you can sting them, they don't want to go back in there and do that. Well, the Bears had a couple of answers for pressure in this game. They got a nice first down on the slant, nice check by Fernando there to get to it, but they didn't answer it every time, and because of that, NC State used it and stopped several drives with pressure. The Bears, once again, we talk about mentals. There were mentals on offense in terms of assignment. There were the false start penalties again, and it's just, once you get down the red zone, it gets so compressed that if teams are going to pressure you to get the ball out of your hands, you have to beat man coverage. And I didn't think that the Bears did a great job of beating man coverage in this game. There wasn't a lot of separation. Talked about this last season, talk about it again this season. Wasn't a ton of separation out there, and you need to have more of that. I thought Jack Andrews had a fantastic game. Again, set career records in this game. So I thought he was really good. He was one of the go-to guys that Fernando had. You could see it. Did a nice job in zone. He found a way to sit down, found a way to get open, and then picked up yards after the catch. I thought it was nice to see them using Jack in the screen game as well. So I think he did a nice job on offense. But mistakes can't happen. It's when you're facing pressure, you have to be on it all the time. Now, especially in the red zone, if they decide to drop into coverage, now it gets super compacted because there's a ton of bodies in space, and now you have to be able to protect for longer. Because if they're dropping into coverage, that means at most they're bringing 4 and they're dropping 7. But several times they were bringing 3 and dropping 8. And so in order to give your quarterback time to sort through it and figure out where the open guy is, you have to protect. And if you've got the extra man in coverage, you're going to 6-man coverage versus a 4-man rush or a 3-man rush, you have to protect that. And the Bears didn't get that done and actually gave up a sack. I think it was in a 3-man rush. But so these are the little mismatches where it's a huge difference. You have to take advantage when you have numbers. You have to beat man coverage at least one spot and know where that's going to happen. And you have to do it consistently. because if you do it consistently, you talk teams out of pressure. Now you're dealing with a different animal. And so that's the big one for them. Down in the red zone, they were trading touchdowns for field goals, and because they weren't able to protect, they weren't able to run the ball effectively when they got down there. The screen game got kind of shut down several times when they got down there. And it just makes it really, really difficult as an offense that once you get into that compressed area, if you can't score, and you have to be able to score. And then when you penalize yourself and back yourself up, it kills you. And so that's a tough one. I thought Fernando, once again, he is a warrior. He is taking shots, and he keeps getting up and making plays and making throws. He wasn't perfect. Very rarely is any player perfect in a game. But he was good, and he handled it, and there's a couple things he could improve on. And I'm sure looking at film, he said, yep, that's where I'm going to get better. But we see him kind of grow every game. And it's hard, I'll tell you right now, as a guy who's been in a pocket. I played for the Miami Hooters, the worst team in the history of organized football. And I used to sit in that pocket and get hammered. And it's hard to keep stepping back up and keep stepping back in when you know you're going to get hit. So it was, for Fernando, it was a good game, another high percentage game, another good completion rate game. But he could use some help in terms of protection out there. The Bears ran the ball for over 100 yards, but they could run the ball more effectively too, especially in the red zone when teams are going to drop out. So anyway, that's my take on it. I talked to Coach Wilcox earlier. We'll get his take right now. Well, right now I've got head coach Justin Wilcox with me. Coach, talk to me about that game. Another close one, another heartbreaker. Again, we always talk about the plays that can win and plays that can lose, and you can't seem to find that play. Talk to me about the NC State game.
Yeah, NC State's a good football team. They had a young quarterback that really seemed to come into his own during the game. It's a talented guy. We played, I think, winning football on defense until the fourth quarter. We gave up 2 drives, which I would not have seen coming. We had opportunities to stop them in both those drives, which was disappointing that we did not. Offensively, we've got yardage, but we're not scoring touchdowns. So our situational football has to get much better. Putting the ball in the end zone when we're in the red zone, 3rd and 4th down, those critical downs, converting, and then 1-minute offense. We did it once, had a chance to score. We were trying to score a touchdown, didn't happen, and we missed a field goal. We get the ball back, have another 1-minute opportunity, and didn't perform. So the situational football has got to be better offensively, and then the kicking game. Obviously, we got to be more consistent. Kicking the ball through the uprights.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you have a chance to make a kick, that's the obvious one that stands out. I know that you guys have moved from Coe to Morris, and it's you're making your moves that you can, but the kickers themselves have to come through on that point. That one's pretty easy. Talk to me about the offensive side of the ball, because you knew going in NC State was a team that was going to bring pressure, and they did. They brought pressure, and so you needed guys to win versus man coverage. And as I watched film, there wasn't a ton of winning versus man coverage. Talk about that during the game and what that means for your offense.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it going into the game. We've talked about it really in the last few weeks. If people are going to zero you, especially out in the field or in the minus territory, I mean, traditionally you'll see a fair amount of zero once you get close to the goal line. But if people are going to zero you on 1st or 2nd down or even 3rd down out in the field or on your side of the field, you got to make them pay. And the way you do that is you split them with a run, which we were able to do. Jet hit them. That was a 0. And they had a missed run fit, and it split them, went for 49 yards. The rest of the day on the zeros, we saw most of them. 2, we did not, which we got one's on the quarterback. But you got to make them pay. I mean, they're going to line up and pressure the quarterback and put everybody in man. There's got to be a consequence for that. So you have to hit a quick game and run by somebody, or you got to hit a deep ball. You got to pick them, which we got a 1 pick on a 4th and 3, not a pick, a rub, whatever you want to call it. But, there's got to be a consequence for the defense to zero blitz somebody, or else you're going to see it more and more and more and more. And I would imagine we're going to continue to see more and more of it until we, give them a reason to get out of it.
Yeah, until you show that you're going to handle it, and you're going to handle it by causing a real problem for the defense. That's a big piece of it. Talk to me about Fernando. You said one of the zero issues was with him, but I thought, he was getting hit a lot in this game and taking some big shots, and still, just a warrior, getting up, fighting, keeping coming back.
Yeah, there's no questioning that guy's toughness, competitiveness. There's just no questioning it. And he's throwing the ball pretty darn accurate. There's always a few that he'd like to have back. I'm pleased with where he's growing. He's a leader. He's tough. He's going to continue to get better. I think there's some things that we can do. They kind of went zero and max drop. They kind of had those two elements, and there's some elements of that max drop where we can hold the ball a little longer and get some people open. I really appreciate, everybody does, Fernando's toughness and his competitiveness, and he's continuing to grow as a quarterback.
Yeah, that's a huge piece of it. Running back spot, again, Jet, like you said, split one this game. Jaden Ott out again. How much does that affect the chemistry of a team when Jaden's out? He's your guy, your feature guy coming in. And I know that it's always next man up in college football, but how much does it affect the chemistry of a team, kind of what the team's thinking, the psyche?
I don't know if it's as much chemistry, Mike. Obviously, the depth chart is the depth chart for a reason. If there wasn't starters, then it wouldn't matter who you put in. So not having starters, yeah, it does impact the game, but it doesn't. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a crap about our problems. We have to find ways with the players that are available to go out and score points, and we're not doing a good enough job of that. We would love to have Jaden back. We'd love to have all those guys that are injured back. We understand injuries are a part of the game. Unfortunately, that side's had to fair amount. So we have to find ways to help the players that are available score points in the game.
And finally, let's talk about the offensive line. In a game where you have pressure defenses, they're bringing different looks, you're going to miss some stuff here and there. I thought I just went through all the pass plays on film. Though Fernando was taking some shots, there were some opportunities for the offensive line to make some plays out there that didn't get done. Yeah,
I think we had a couple pre-snap penalties again, which are frustrating. And I'll be honest with you, Mike, we're trying everything that anybody's ever heard of and how to eliminate those. And at some point, the responsibility of the player of knowing the snap count, if there's a play called, knowing the movement of the defense, we have to execute it better. And so obviously the coaches, we take a lot of responsibility in preparing the guys to do that. And then there's got to be some responsibility on the player to get the job done and not jump off sides. We actually, in terms of our targeting and knowing who to block, pretty clean throughout the game. However, there were times when, we got beat on a rush and a max drop when we have a help inside, and we shouldn't be getting beat outside. And so we gave up some rushes, some pass rush, for example, to some players that we shouldn't have in theory. And so we got to perform better there. And I thought Bastion probably had his best game. Will continues to battle at center. He's not the biggest guy. He's very tough and competitive. Wasn't perfect, but he is a competitor in there. And then, I think Nick Morrow is a really young guy who's got a really high ceiling, and he's kind of thrust into the fire right now. And I've kind of told Nick he just has to keep fighting. Obviously, he's got to get stronger and add some mass. He is a really good athlete. He cares a lot, and it's there's some challenging moments right now, but he just got to stay with it because his ceiling is very high, and we've got to continue to work with him. We didn't play. There's a couple other spots we didn't play so good, and we got to find ways to improve there. And then, kind of when you're facing the zero, when you're facing all that stuff, you guys use several scat protections during the game, and scat being for those at home, running back getting out, he's a free release. But you weren't able to get there because it had some people in coverage. Talk about using scat releases, how much max you try to use, all of that stuff inside for protection. Yeah, you really kind of have all of it.
A huge piece of it,
Yeah, so you have your scat releases, 5 out fast, and that means the ball's coming out. We hit a shallow cross we unfortunately dropped. Mm-hmm. I believe that was not a scat. That was a 6-man slide. So in zero, it's there's different kinds of zero. There's a +1, which means there's more on the line of scrimmage than you can block, and somebody's going to be a free hitter. There's other times they're in zero when you can go 6 or 7 man, and they got to have a hugger, a guy who's responsible for the guy, the tight end or the back who's in protection to hug. And those you actually have more time. And then you have the 7-mans where you have a tight end and a back stay in and a 5-man O-line, and then maybe the safety is the free hitter. So you got a lot of time before he can get there. So there's different ways. Not every zero is created the same. And I think identifying that, being able to teach the quarterbacks that so they know, well, how fast am I going to get hit? Somebody's free, but where is he? Is he on the line or is he back in the secondary? We had a zero hit the touchdown run. We had a slant to JB Brady for a first down. There was a zero. We had a shallow cross that we dropped that was a zero. Trying to remember the other ones. There was one that we did not identify, and we went scat protection, and that's when we got a grounding call. Okay, that one was not identified. So, yeah. There was one that was obvious on a third down. I mean, everybody's on the line of scrimmage. We threw a fade to Brady. He can run a better route. We can throw a better ball. And those are the ones you got to be able to, strike so they don't do it again.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me about having Mike Blesh up in the press box, right? He's your play caller. I totally get that as an OC, as a guy who's called plays. I like being up high. But as an offensive line coach, too, kind of those split duties, how much does that affect the offensive line?
I don't think it did a whole lot because we have, Mike Steffel, who works with our tight ends, but is also down there, and Mike is 100% dialed into it. We have in this era of college football, now you can have more people. And so we have another coach, Winterhawk, who's worked with our offensive line. He works with them every day. He can communicate. He's the mouthpiece from Mike to the O-line. The in-between series, I feel like has actually been cleaner and more productive with Mike Blesh being upstairs. So I think for a lot of this is just a matter of it's obviously knowing who to block, identification, but then executing the block and doing it at a high level, down in and down out, and in critical moments, third downs, red zone, and being at your best when your best is needed.
Yeah, for sure. I obviously, as a quarterback, my coach was always up in the booth, but we got on the phone in between. We would talk on back in the old days. We had the landline phones, so
right.
It was a little different back then. But O-line guys, obviously, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of kind of moving pieces that you have to handle down there. So just curious about that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the defense. You said I thought they played extremely well for the majority of the game, and you talked about the 2 drives. So talk about let's talk about the majority of the game, and let's dissect those 2 drives.
Yeah, I thought they played very well. I mean, the run defense was really good. I mean, I think, I don't remember what the stats were exactly, but didn't get much going in the run game. I thought we affected the quarterback. Where we struggled was obvious pass situations. And then the fourth quarter, we had some critical down busts. Not even busts, just either missed execution or there was a bust, especially on the last touchdown. Yeah, I thought the guys had a good plan. They have some tough matchups. The quarterback is a very talented young man. I mean, I don't know if you saw him up close. He's probably 6'5", and he can throw the ball. He's athletic. Late in the game, there was a key play. They got down there, but we knocked them back, and they were 3rd and 11, and we played them in man-free and covered them well. And we had one of our best rushers couldn't quite get him on the ground, and then another rusher missed him, and then he threw the ball to the 1-yard line, and they scored the next play. So that was a 4-point play, that scramble completion. They probably had 4 in the game, what I would call 50-50 wins, meaning they threw the ball up and caught it, with a guy covered. They had a back shoulder on their sideline. They had 2 in the seam to the tight end. They had another one off a double move that a guy went up, and they were all contested, but they made them all. And so those plays showed up, and then the last 3rd and 7 we had 2 guys that didn't execute well, and we still had a chance to get them on the ground. And and Noel, who's a hell of a player, playing great for us, missed it. Yeah, had a miss, and Teddy and Marcus, we got to get them on the ground there on that last 3rd and 7, and we didn't do so. Those plays were frustrating, and it was kind of one of those games where we played, 65, 70 snaps, and 60 of them were really pretty dang good. Even the ones they get to earn plays, like, okay, well, they beat us on that one, but really some good football, and then some really, untimely, critical losses.
And so we talked about it after the game. Obviously, those plays are the ones that make the difference. And oftentimes during the season, you'll have those. I mean, every team has them. Teams go to the Super Bowl have plays where they blow an assignment, they have a pre-snap, penalty, all those things. But then the teams that win find a way to make those happen. And you just have not been able to find a way to make those happen as a team. What do you do differently this week in practice? What are you guys doing to emphasize that, to get guys to make that one play or those two plays?
Yeah, I think it's obviously we're competition and putting something on it and doing it late in practice. I mean, we're talking about fourth quarters. I mean, the defense overall this season played really well, minus 2 fourth quarters. So for them, it's finishing games in the fourth quarter, critical moments in the fourth quarter, obvious pass situations, got to have it downs. Offensively, it's red zone opportunities and putting the ball in the end zone. Personnel groupings. We got to give some other guys some chances to see if they can create an explosive play, because we're struggling to find those right now. The Jet gave us one. Jack has given us some really good harder yards, but we got to find a way to get a post route or a shallow cross that splits, or some of those explosive plays. So creating that competition, giving guys opportunities. For some players, I think there's, confidence and belief that they got to have in themselves, and you try and build that up. Other guys, it's accountability to do their job every single down, who have the ability and have shown to be able to do it. So I think it's all those things. It's knowing your position, knowing your team, creating competition, theming practice in different ways, theming it different for the kickers. And, again, there's enough good things that we got to build on those. But man, it's just these. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like this, Mike. I'll be honest with you, I've never been through a stretch like this. And so there's no playbook. You don't throw everything out, but you got to find ways in those critical moments to make the play. And the reality is, like, the truth of it is, like, you don't know what is coming. If everybody knew, hey, it's the 63rd play, that's the one. Well, okay, well, great. The reality is it's the next play. That's the one that makes the difference. And so it takes a lot of confidence, belief. It takes talent. It takes all those things to get that done. And I know there's want to. It's not about that, but there is a matter of, okay, being at your best when your best is needed. When is that? Well, it's the next play. I can't tell you when that 1 or 4 plays is going to be. So just assume it's the next one.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard a great quote the other day. It was, if I knew where I was going to die, I just wouldn't go there, right? So it's the same idea in football. If I knew this is the play, then I'd make the play. I'd be so prepared for this play. But the key, and you and I talk about mindset stuff all the time, but the key is getting guys aligned so that every play is that play in their mind, so that their attention, there's no attentional blink there, that they miss what's going on in front of them. They miss something because they're focused on something else. The game's not too big, it's not too small, but they're right in that, perfect comfort zone. So that's the hard thing, right? And that's the joy of coaching, is finding that piece. And it's also the frustration of coaching, is finding that piece in other players.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I've been in a part of teams where, to be honest, Mike, we might have had the same mistakes, but God, we were just so much better. And so it didn't show up in the scoreboard, because I have yet to be a part of a team or a game where you go through and everything's, well, nobody made any mistakes or there was no execution, because the other side is trying too, and they got good players. I mean, NC State has good football players. They have good coaches. They're trying just as hard. And so, those margins become very slim. And if the margins are very slim, like your room for error or room for making one mistake, like that is the difference potentially. And if you have a bigger margin, then you might have made that same mistake and gotten away with it.
Yeah, and then it doesn't seem so bad, right? So we'll get that on film. Right?
Yeah, nobody knows. Yeah, exactly right. So it's just that's the world we live in. I mean, it's 4 plays from being undefeated, and probably one more play from having 2 wins. So it's like all those things, like we have to acknowledge and say, like, we are plenty good enough to win, but we also, our margins are just very small. That's what it is right now. So we have to put our bat on the ball a lot, and we don't have room to make those mistakes, especially in those critical moments. And so we got to continue coaching them and help them get better and create confidence and belief and break the dam. So like we talked about this before, like once you make that one, well, you're more apt to make the next one, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that goes all the way down to kickers too, right? Once they have the confidence that they're going to make every kick, and that big kick doesn't seem so big because they already know that they're going to hit it. So
yeah.
Huge piece of it this week. Let's turn the page now. So familiar opponent here in Oregon State coming down, former Pac-10 or Pac-12 foe. Tell me about the Oregon State that you see on film. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, Oregon State's always going to be a really tough, well-coached team. Trent does a hell of a job. Their OC does a great job with their offense. Keith, who I know really well, coaching the defense. So they're going to be very well coached. We know that. Offensively, running the ball extremely well. The quarterback's a very good player. We saw him last year. He was really tough to defend. He threw the ball accurately, gave us fits. He was hard to get on the ground. He's very elusive. He runs well, and he never takes a big hit. He's just got a great feel for the game. Running backs, a really good player. Receivers, really good. Defensively, they're going to play really sound. Your heart, they don't bust. Keith does a hell of a job with them, and they got good DBs, guys getting their hands on the ball. They play really hard up front, so it's a good football team.
What do you expect from your team coming into it?
Great energy, elite focus, and it's just execution, and we got to win the fourth quarter. We're doing some good things. Again, you look at the positives. You can't ignore the positives because there's a lot. Of course, everybody's going to focus on the negatives right now. When you don't win those close games, 100% of the attention, 99.9 goes to the negatives, and I understand that. But we also acknowledge, all right, here's the things we're doing well. We got to build on those, and then in order to get the results we want, here's the action needed on offense, at receiver, at kicker, at quarterback, at O-line, at D-line, all those things. So we're giving them action items. We're coaching them hard, and it's not about misery and trying to make people feel bad. Everybody's frustrated. I mean, it doesn't take a special person to be upset when things don't go their way. That's not special. What's special is that you could persevere when other people can't, and that's where we have to take a lot of pride right now. It takes a big man to put your chest out and go again when you've had 4 games gone like they've gone. So let's take a lot of pride in being one of the few who can actually do that.
Yeah, well said. I think that's the point, right? Keep coming back, be resilient, find a way to get your head back into it where you do make that play in that moment. Coach, appreciate your time today. Appreciate you coming on. Always good. Win, lose, or draw. You're always good on this show, so I appreciate you.
All right, thank you, Mike.
So that's Coach Wilcox. You heard about it there. Obviously, some stuff the Bears have to clean up. A little more energy at practice this week out there from both the leaders and the coaches going into it. I think there's an accountability and an understanding that this game coming up, Oregon State, is a big game. You're going up against a former conference opponent, team that was kind of left in the wind along with Washington State to be the Pac-2. It's now reformulated. I think it's up to 8 or 9 teams. But this game is a watermark for sure in that you have to win this game at home. I think just based on kind of the history of both teams and where you're at. Last week was a tough one. NC State was tough. Just to kind of wrap that up, the Bears have to figure out a way to be more effective in the red zone. They have to figure out a way to not make the big mistakes when it counts. They've been outscored 42-9 in the fourth quarter in their 4 losses, and they blanked Pitt in one of those fourth quarters. So really, in 3 of the 4 losses, outscored 42-9. Bears have to finish at the end of the game, have to put the ball in the end zone when they're in the red zone, have to figure out that running attack, find a way to run the football. They're trying to manufacture stuff around it with the screen game, have to see if it works this week, and they have to pick up pressure. Oregon State this week is going to bring pressure. It's an aggressive style defense. They always have been. Keith Hayward's up there as a D coordinator now. Trent Bray, head coach, defensive guy. They love to play aggressive, physical. They always have. They love playing man coverage. And so you're going to see some of that with pressure this week. The Bears, like I said, have earned it. When you show that you can't pick it up, when you show that you can't handle it effectively, then you're going to get more of it. And until you can show that you can punish a team for playing it, you're going to keep getting a steady dose of it. And I'll tell you as a player, it was my favorite coverage to throw against because I knew if I got it off on time and my guys could separate, it was going to be big yards. And so that's where the Bears need to be. They need to relish pressure. They need to find their matchups. They need to take their shots, and they need to execute and land them. And if they do that this week against Oregon State, they can talk them out of that pressure-style defense. Now, they're a much better passing defense, coming in, I think, at 29th in the country as a pass defense, coming in at 119 as a rushing defense this week. So the Bears might have a chance to run the ball a little better up front. Hopefully the running game manufactures this week. But you know they're going to be physical. You know they're going to bring pressure. You know they're going to be tough. You know they're going to hit you, and you're going to see some man because that's what they do at Oregon State. They'll mix and zone. They'll do everything else too. But because the Bears have done what they've done this season, I would expect more man. I would expect more pressure. Offensively, if you were to turn on the film and you just didn't look at the coaching staff, you'd be like, oh yeah, same Oregon State team. They love to rush the ball. 7th in the country rushing the ball. As a result, they're number 1 in the country in terms of total possession, 35-29. And they have been really, really good in the red zone, 20 of 28 in terms of touchdowns in the red zone. So very effective running the ball, very effective, very physical running the ball. And they had the starting tailback, you'll recognize him from Colorado. It's Anthony Hankerson. Good football player, number 0. He's a smaller but thicker back, 5'8", 203. He can get after it. He's classic Oregon State back, kind of a littler guy, swole guy, kind of thick, but he'll make a cut on you and make you miss in space. Their number 2, Jam Griffin, has actually been injured, so not likely to play in this game. So Saladin Allah is their backup, and he's also a good young back who's getting a lot more reps because Jam Griffin has been injured. So you're going to see that in terms of offense. Their quarterback, we should be very familiar with because we played against him when he was up in Idaho last year. Really good football player. I like him a lot. Giovanni McCoy. And when we saw him at Idaho, I thought, man, this guy's a little kind of executor. This guy can make it happen. He's a dealer back there as a quarterback. He can run a little bit. He can kind of get through his progressions and just operate the offense. And so I think he has really good football instincts. I think he's a guy, when you watch him on film, I like him a lot. He's undersized, but nowadays for quarterbacks, that's not that big a deal. But he's a guy that I think can operate in this system. Bears have to find a way to pressure him, to get after him, have to deal with some of their injuries on defense as well, and offense. TJ Sessions, Coach Wilcox said this week, right tackle, is listed as doubtful. So probably going to see some young blood on the offensive line. Going to have to figure out a way to repair some of those holes. So Siwapi Vadakani, got to see if he can come back this week. I've said it many times over. The game is won and lost on the offensive line. And so if the Bears can get Vadakani back, they can get some good play out of the guys who are filling in, perhaps they got a good chance this week, but that's where you win it. Big boys set the tone, they make the plays, establish a running game, changes the face of the game. If you are coming to the game this week, I would love to see you over at Tailgate Town. I am doing a book signing for my new book, Everyday Great. If you bought it, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I have, since the Kindle came out, I have been on the bestsellers list for 3 weeks now. And so I'm the top new performer in 3 different categories, top new seller, and best new release. And so I appreciate you so much getting that title of bestseller. Kind of cool. Former Cal quarterback, Cal guy, up there on the bestsellers list, and it has to do a lot with my Cal family. So I appreciate you all buying the books. I would love to see you over there. Come by. I'll sign your book. If you don't have one, come by. We'll have books there as well. Justin Legre, my play-by-play partner, will be over there. So if you haven't met Justin yet, here's your chance. You can come over and meet us for a little bit. And also Mike Parker, who is the voice of the Beavs, I talked to him on his radio show about the game today. He said he may come over as well. So always outstanding to talk to you here. I hope to see you on Saturday at the book signing. I will be there 10 until just about noon. I've got to get back up in the booth in time for the game. But I'll be out there signing copies of my book. I look forward to seeing you. And as always, for Bear Insider, Ultimate Insider, I'm Mike Pawlawski. Go Bears.